Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I hope you are having a great day. I'm like Queen Lisa. We've got Dr. Reg McDaniel with us today talking about the benefits of micronutrition and aloe vera. And he has some more information for us today on soil. I'm going to probably mess this one up, but I'm going to let him correct us and educate us. So, Soilve viral adjuvant. And I'll let you guys write in the comments what you think that is, and then we'll have him come in and tell us what that is. Get more education so that we can be better prepared for the future with Dr. Reg McDaniel right after this.
A series of lectures on more comprehensive nutrition. One of the things that we keep seeking to do is to inform individuals that they have in their power the choice and the amount of different nutrients to improve their quality of life at a lower cost. And this is emphasized because the World Health Organization released the figures that the United States has the highest cost per citizen per year healthcare costs, and it's rapidly increasing, while on the same farm used for members of the United Nations, the United States rated last time number 35th in quality of life and health status. So number one in cost, number 35 in benefits. And the ability to change this is in each individual's hands. And nutrition is a very important part of it. Another thing that long ago it was recognized by even Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, that nutrition combined with exercise improved quality of health. And we now know that lifestyle, avoiding excesses such as burning trash and sucking it into the lungs is not healthy. Any type of plant material that you volatilize, and excess alcohol and even excess food is not healthy, because obesity is a terrible weight on health as one ages. So with this, I want to go with some of the research that Carrington Laboratories sponsored after having the founder of Carrington Laboratories had a small company called AvaCare and had 12 products made with aloe vera leaf gel. And the company raised $20 million in investment capital to search for what is in aloe vera leaf gel that is of support to health. And the goal was to make a FDA approved drug, but it had absolutely no toxicity, that we could not give the FDA the LD50 and the LD100, which means the lethal dose that it takes to kill half the animals and the dose to kill all the animals. And there must be a wide window, or they will not allow you to proceed further in the development of a new drug. Well, all our efforts were thrown out by the FDA because number one, no toxicity whatsoever could be shown, and number two, everything that the aloe oligosaccharide was added to, whether it was physical disability from normal health, mental or emotional, improved when you added this to the diet. And the reason is that the biochemistry of our lives is operated on the combination of nutrients that are hooked together in cellular synthesis to make bioactive molecules to run all the systems. So with this, I will start with this lecture. Thank you. As I have pointed out, that we have these lectures on nutrition in hopes that individuals will recognize that within their body, by their choices of food and combined with exercise, which is very important. And then lifestyles are also important. You need proper rest and sleep, and along with exercise, and that you need to avoid things that are deleterious to the health. But we really focus on what we discovered is the value of nutrition, which was quite a contrast to what I was taught through pre-med and medical and 2 residency programs that was pretty much centered on the drug pharmaceutical paradigm, but that in the coding of the genes in every cell in your body controls cellular synthesis of how nutrient molecules are added together. And there was a small company about 10 miles from where I'm sitting right here in Irving, Texas, that the owner of the company was named Clinton Howard. The company was named AvaCare, and he had 12 aloe vera leaf gel products. One of them was a aloe beverage called Aloe. And in 1984-85, at the peak of the panic over AIDS, and I say panic, it was primarily confined to homosexual males and prostitutes and drug addicts, but there was the fear it was going to break into the general population, and so people were terrorized. Well, during this period of 84-85, Clinton Howard received 7 short statements. They were faxes then, there weren't any emails and cards, that 7 individuals in 7 states had drunk his Aloe, and they had been bedfast, waiting to die from this virus or this infection of no known cause and no treatment. And they more or less ended their statement to him. Was able to go back to work or back to school, and I thought you would want to know. Well, Mr. Howard came to my office at Dallas-Fort Worth Medical Center and wanted my assistance as a consultant, as a medical doctor, to help them in their efforts. That he had established a new company called Carrington Laboratories and raised $20 million with the goal to find out what was in the aloe leaf gel that caused these patients to be able to go back to work or to their schooling. And I originally said, no, you need to go to medical school, infectious disease specialists. They're set up to do these type of things. I'm not qualified to help you. But it wouldn't go away. And actually, I found out about 2 years later, he had been trying to do that, but no one at a medical school would give him the time of day, even though he had money in regard to developing something from the aloe plant. And I have a FDA physician's IND. It's called individual physician's examination. And what we did is that I didn't believe that the 7 patients benefited from aloe. And I felt like that they should repeat a little pilot study with medical observation, and that I would show him that the aloe would not be of any benefit. and save spending their money on a wild goose chase. Well, in the New England Journal of Medicine, a article written by Dr. Robert Redfield, at that time a young physician, wrote a paper on evaluating and staging AIDS patients. And we took that paper and all the criteria that he followed and made a form, and we followed 15 patients under all the requirements of the FDA to do a pilot study, and started out with the Aloe drink that had been reported to be a benefit. And to my amazement, they started reporting they were feeling better. Before it was over with, they sent a white powder made from the aloe gel, which I immediately ordered a protest that when you start a study, you don't change what you're doing in the middle of it. It's like changing horse in the middle of a stream. However, they said this is not a pilot study to be published. This is for guidance of the company, and we want to know if what we develop in this powder is the same thing that's in the drink. Well, actually, the patients did better on the concentrated powder because the solids in the aloe leaf gel, it's about 98 to 99% water, and this 1% was made from the solids. They did better on the powder. Lo and behold, in 90 days, these 15 patients on the criteria was in the New England Journal improved 72%. Well, in our hospital, we had a family practitioner that had a number of AIDS patients. So he did 25 patients, and in 90 days, using the same criteria and all, they improved 69%. And these total of 25 and 15 patients were given to a biostatistician. And even though we had no controls, and the biostatistics were, there's a 90% probability that what we were doing was a benefit to the patients, and that it was a basis to do more studies. So I was totally wrong in that I thought I would be able to show them that giving AIDS patients aloe leaf gel was worthless. It was of value. And before it was over with, for Carrington Laboratories, I did a total of 45 patients in 3 different pilot studies, trying to support the efforts of the company to make the active ingredient from the aloe a new antiviral drug. Well, the problem was with the FDA that they want to know from you in the early stages in toxicity studies how much of the material it takes to kill 50% of the animals and how much of the material to kill 100% of the animals. It's called the LD50 and the LD100. There needs to be a wide window between that, or they won't let you go to the second stage in drug development. Well, to have the benefits we were seeing and have absolutely no toxicity was medical paradigm heresy. And that's one of the reasons they threw us out. Now, the second thing is it hadn't dawned on me that medicine is oriented one drug, one disease. Well, this was the next problem we had with the FDA, that it didn't matter if the individuals had a deviation from normal that was physical, mental, or emotional. They improved. And that too is heresy and not wanted. We didn't get into the fact, didn't progress to the fact that the cost of the aloe leaf gel was so economical that it was virtually dirt cheap as compared to a new drug in patent. Well, the FDA kicked us out, which is big pharmaceutical companies, watchdog and attack dog. We had all of this, as I may have mentioned, that Carrington Laboratories raised $20 million to try to develop this new drug. And we had 12 academic institutions doing basic science research that the FDA required. So we had all this data that we got thrown out of because of lack of toxicity. And in 1994, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act was passed, which founded the supplement industry formally in the United States. And it took us a little while, but we finally recognized that one of the academic institutions had shown that the active ingredient in the aloe was acetylated mannose, also called ace-mannin, and that it is utilized in cellular synthesis to make a domain on the surface of all cells of the body. And this domain is a site for cell-to-cell instructions and information. And it's another long story, but a biochemist was born in Nigeria that came to the United States and got his doctorate up at North Texas University. And in a rainstorm in the winter, he was delivered to the little laboratory of Carrington Laboratories. And while waiting for a taxi to take him to a place, Dr. Bill McAnally found out that his doctoral thesis was on separation of carbohydrate units, or the identifying the sugars that make up carbohydrates. And Dr. McAnally hired him right on the spot because this was an area of research very few people had any interest in. And in fact, when I was in medical school, the idea was that carbohydrates were burned for energy, and that was about it. Well, they found out with more current research, the carbohydrates, and particularly the sugars, do a lot more than just be a source for energy. Well, before we get through here, we will proceed down to Texas A&M School of Veterinary Medicine, which was the main academic institution that did research for Carrington Laboratories. And they had a professor there, Dr. David Busby, that had a National Institutes of Health grant to search for natural products that would be used for anti-cancer activity. And one of his models was murine Norman sarcoma, which was notorious for the fact that though it was a survey model to look for plant substances that would be anti-cancer, that it had a history of 100% lethality, regardless of what was done for the animal to try different techniques or materials. And the one injection of the aloe ace-mannin, 41% of the animals destroyed all evidence of the sarcoma. And with 2 injections a week, he got up to about 65% survival. And to combine it with surgery, he got up to a 90% survival rate for this survey model. And this was all done down at Texas A&M. But in addition, they had a group there that were involved in vaccines, and they had experimental vaccines against horse viruses that I had never heard of, the viruses, that they could not get protective levels to stimulate antibodies against the virus. By adding just a small amount of the aloe ace-mannin, these horse vaccines were made very effective, actually got protective levels like they had never seen before. And this led to the next thing that I want to point out that Carrington Laboratories had a small laboratory in the Trinity Valley in Dallas, and that they had found that under the microscope that you could put white cells, looking at them under the microscope, and put a little of this ace mannan, and these cells became very active, and they engulf bacteria or particles much more avidly. The white cells were activated and stimulated. In tissue culture, they found out that the active ingredient was effective against common viruses, pathogenic viruses that affect humans, and also bacteria. And they found out that wounds in rabbits heal faster. And one of the things is they were trying to figure out what was in this, and they made a powder from the leaf gel, and they wondered the nature of the molecule that was responsible for these benefits, and it was not destroyed by heating in the microwave, which was subjective evidence that this probably wasn't a protein made up of amino acids or either fatty acids, because heating would destroy the bioactivity, but only the carbohydrates would be resistant to the heat. And they were able to show that in this little lab that particles of the aloe mannan could be taken inside the white cells, and that engulfing is called phagocytosis, to take them inside the cell. And you could do special stains for carbohydrates, and that would last for about 5 days. It was like it was time release inherent with the particles from the aloe plant. Well, these were some of the things that were done in preparation to make decisions of what to send to academic institutions and try to guide them. Now, as I said, Texas A&M School of Veterinary Medicine was the #1 outside academic institution that did a lot of work, and they took kittens. Actually, they took 20 kittens that were weaning size, and they took 10 of them, and in meatball, they put 35 milligrams per kilo of the aloe powder that they produced, and gave it to the 10 kittens, and then they flushed down their nose a feline rhinotracheitis virus, which is the model for the common cold in animals, which is the upper uratory viral infection. And 8 of those cats that had been given the aloe and the meatball didn't get any symptoms whatsoever. 2 of the cats had runny eyes and lassitude for about 2 to 3 days, and it was over. Well, they had 10 controls, and they did not give them any of the ace mannan, but they gave them meatball with nothing in it. And then they flushed the rhinotracheitis virus down their nose, and there was 100% infections of lassitude, fever, laying around like they've got a cold. And they were sick for 30 days, and 1 died of pneumonia. So that was pretty good evidence that this activity progressing from tissue culture to a small animal had antiviral activity. I told you about the horse vaccine. Well, having found this out, the people that were working in research with vaccines immediately went to a chick antiviral trivalent antiviral vaccine that was made by Solvay International of Belgium, though they have facilities here in the United States too. We were quite disappointed they quit on the horse vaccines, because everybody was from Texas and horses rate real high. And all of a sudden here they turned to chickens. We said, this because they're so cheap. They says, don't you know that the #1 use of vaccines, all vaccines, is on chickens, because you feed out thousands of them for the market. They go to the market, and then you start another batch 2 or 3 times a year, And so those that you give the vaccine to end up in the market and are eaten, and you do some more, and you keep using vaccines. So it's a number one commercial use of vaccines. So they started doing the chickens, and they got results that amazed them about the benefits, kind of like the horses. Also down at Texas A&M, Dr. Chena got his doctor's thesis on research that he did on the adjuvant properties of this Aloe mannin, boosting antibody production in horses and chickens. And so at this point, we had objective evidence of two major classes of animal viruses were inactivated by the active ingredient from the Aloe mannin. Well, Salve took the kind of the opinion that these people down at Texas A&M didn't know what they're doing. They had spent years developing their trivalent vaccine, and they could get a 60 to 65% herd protection with this vaccine. Now, the herd protection thing is more research has been done in chickens than anything else because of the thousands of observations that you can make easily and rapidly. But Texas A&M had reported a greater than 90% herd protection with their vaccine if they just added a little bit of Aloe mannin to it. And they did extensive research that I'm going to show you, trying to determine could there be any truth to what they were being told by Texas A&M. And what we see there is a brochure outside cover that the results of their research done at Salve. And as you say, the biggest thing to come along in years, and I'll be telling you why they say this, and they call the ASIM-1, the vaccine that they'd had for years, trivalent vaccine. And when I say trivalent, it was against the virus for Newcastle virus, for hemorrhagic bursal disease of chicken, and also Marek's virus. So those are the, shall we say, childhood virus infections of baby chicks, which you're more familiar with the trivalent of humans, which is for DPT, diphtheria, pertussis, whooping cough, and tetanus. So it's we're talking about two trivalent vaccines, one in chickens and one in children. Now, the Salve was found a hard time believing what they were getting in a few hundred or thousand chicks. So eventually contracted with 11 broiler companies to do chickens with and without vaccine that has the Aloe mannin added to it. And the total number of chickens that were done in these studies was 21 million, which is nearly 22 million when you add the 890, 812 chicks there, that it's nearly 22 million. Well, the first thing they were able to prove with this large N value of observations that their flock protection of 60-65% rose to 90 or greater than 95% protection with their vaccine if you just added a little bit of almost undetectable amount of the Aloe mannin to it. Fact is, the protection level for the herd was so high that when the baby chicks are born, they take them in and they debeak them, and they put a drop of this vaccine up their nose, and they do it so fast that they thought possibly it would be 100% if they would slow down, that the lack of being 100% protection was because of failure to get the one drop of vaccine in the nose just right, that it was human error. The second thing they found, which really got my attention, the to want to know about it, the chicks gain more weight on less chow. And if you know anything about commercialization of animals for food, this is highly significant. The third thing they saw is this Marek's virus is notorious because if the chicks get it, it is the #1 cause of loss in the broiler industry. You feed out the animal, you catch it, take it to the processing plant, remove the feathers, the legs, and clean it up, and it's ready to either be sent to the market or chopped up for the different parts for the restaurants. And the FDA inspector there says burn it to an ash, because in the skin you see these yellowish white blotches that are evidence of T-cell lymphoma, a malignancy. And so they have all the expense of the chicken, and it's burned to an ash, and that's the #1 cause of loss. And this was highly significant to the broiler industry to eliminate the Marek's virus. And it probably took about a year or two for us to recognize that Carrington here was a known cause in nature to cause a malignancy, the Marek's virus, and that it was totally eliminated by adding the Aloe mannin to the vaccine, which stimulated a lot of projected potential benefit in human. Now, when you have thousands of chickens in these broiler houses, you have some that are not as strong as others, and you have about 1% mortality. You just find the chickens dead in the house. Well, this was reduced by almost a percent, and that was significant. Also, after you feed them out and you take them to the processing plant, the carcass just looks bad and all, and they call it a condemnation. And this reduced the amount of condemnation of the chicken carcass. And that the food conversion was improved. They gained, again, as we set up there in #2, more weight on less food. They converted the chow at a better rate to make chicken meat. Now, this is a study for the Marek's virus protection with the plain vaccine, which is the maroon there. At day 1, 2, 3, and 4, when you challenge the chickens, do they have protection? And you can see that by adding the blue grouse, that you have much rapid onset of protection against the Marek's virus at day 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is a viral protection against all 3 at 4 days. And with the plain vaccine, you had about 50% of the chickens were protected against all 3 viruses, whereas with Ace Mannin, it was 70% had been protected in 4 days. Again, very positive benefit. This is Newcastle and hemorrhagic bursal viral protection. And
Okay, that was really weird. I'm going to try to continue the video, but obviously we're having a little interference.
Well, I just called you on the phone to tell you that I think I can finish off without the
Okay,
slides to tell
I'll
you.
let you, yeah, I'll let you go ahead and try. My Wi-Fi completely shut down.
Well, as
So
I pointed
we
out,
can hear your phone going though, Dr. Reg. Can you hang up your phone?
yes, I'll hang it up.
Okay, thanks.
Solvay worked with these 11 broiler companies to do nearly 22 million chickens. They
Mhm.
found out in some of these huge broiler things that they have hot days, and it's called heat stress,
Yes.
and they lose chickens and all. And those that had had the vaccine with the aloe mannin added to it didn't die from the overheating. But the really important thing that got my attention was they had that food conversion to flesh that they sold. It was a very low percent, but when you have thousands of observations, you can detect small amounts of difference. And so this is something that you can only detect with thousands of chickens. And I was fascinated by what in the world was going on that these chickens gained more weight with less food. And so I talked to the people that did these studies, and they said when the routine trivalent vaccine is given to a baby chicken, then they put it back into the house, that it just stands there and doesn't eat or drink for 1 to 1.5 days. And it fluffs all its little down up, it elevates its wings, it squints its eyes, it doesn't move, and it everything indicates it doesn't feel well. And then it begins to eat. And again, since you in about 6 weeks is how long they lived before they're
Mhm.
uh,
Shipped
slaughtered
off.
for the market.
Yeah.
That small amount of 24 to 36 hours that the little baby chicken actually loses a little weight, minor amount, of course, and doesn't eat or drink, can be detected. And of course, that's desirable. But this really hit me between the eyes, I guess you would say, because in my extensive travel, time and again, I was most upset by particularly mothers who would bring a child somewhere between 8 and 12 years old in a wheelchair, couldn't lift its head. They'd have a board across the arms, and it's bent over, slobbering, and seemed to be in coma. And the mother would tell me this child was completely normal until we had to give him the DPT shot. And that's a very low incidence. And it's a very controversial subject because vaccines are the most economical public health measure that can be done to prevent communicable diseases. If you follow the extended lifespan of human beings for the last 50 years, refrigeration of food, processing of sewage, and processing of water that you run in your things costs millions of dollars to set up these plants to be able to accomplish this. But for virtually pennies, you can give a vaccine and prevent diphtheria, which can be lethal, or pertussis, which you have a certain amount that don't live, and tetanus, which can be a terrible, terrible neuromuscular disease for just pennies. And there's an old saying in medicine, I can't give you the Latin phrase, but it means do no harm. And to have these parents bring these children to me and say this was very upsetting, because I wouldn't want to accept that any physician would do anything to a child that would cause this adverse event.
I think your
Uh,
phone's still trying to record. Says cantankerous things. Yeah, It's still trying to.
I got my phone cut off.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I
Now,
don't think any doctor or parent. Oh, your phone's still going. It's just really trying to connect with me. We're just having all this wonderful, you know,
well,
it's
let me tell you the rest of the
universe getting in
story.
the way. Yeah, tell me the rest of the story. I'm curious.
I struggle with this, but in medical school, I had a professor that kept emphasizing that a mother knows the child better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And that if a mother comes in and tells you this child is sick and you can't find the reason for it, you better look again and be careful and never send the child out if you haven't been able to find anything, even including doing a spinal tap to find out if there's cells in their spinal fluid. Because when a mother says a child is sick, you better listen to it. It doesn't matter what her education is or whatever you may think, they know their child. And these mothers telling me this over and over again, this child was normal until we gave her the DPT shot, was very worrisome. But that wasn't the end of the story because as I say, I have now traveled to 15 countries and lectured in all of them. I had parents come to me and tell me that the first time my child had a DPT shot, he had terrible fever, sometimes a mild seizure. They cried all night. And if you've had any children that they gave the DPT shot, one of the big complaints of the parents is the child is irritable, won't eat or drink. Does that sound like something you
Sounds
heard?
familiar. Yeah.
Won't eat or drink and cry all night, and the parents couldn't sleep. But then they recovered. Well, these same parents would say, well, I didn't want to give my child another DPT shot. It was so bad. But because their pediatrician says, I won't have him in my practice if you don't get this DPT shot, or either they would say that you can't go to this kindergarten or even in school without this extra DPT shot. So they give them the second one under this duress, and it was just like they injected them with water. Absolutely no response. And they said our whole family had started taking the dietary supplement with the aloe mannin in it. And we wonder if possibly this is why there was no response the second time. And of course, you down at Texas A&M, they showed you get higher antibody levels, but with the baby chickens, you were able to show that if you had a little bit of mannin in the vaccine, that they didn't have any reaction. So I have carried this as, I would say, an emotional burden for a decade, more than a decade now, because it's very expensive to do research in humans. And actually, at some medical schools, because the child has a whole life in front of him, they have never approved a clinical study in children or childbearing age mothers, because the potential for if with toxic drugs can cause such a damage. They don't want to do damage, and that's just a requirement that they have for their institutional review board. They will not cover or give you permission to do a child or a childbearing mother experiment.
I
Then
was
you
going
got
to say, Dr. McDaniel, they have not publicly done them, but there are stories of women that worked for 3M that can tell you that some of those companies knew exactly what they were doing and were documenting their own employees of what happened um, to their employees' children, and all that from exposing them to some of those forever plastics and things like that. So those studies may not have been held by professional, in the traditional senses, but I think that some of those studies have gone on for a long time.
But as I frequently have said, 22 million baby chicks can't be wrong. And
Right.
I think this is a study that just cries out to be done. And I keep, every time I get a chance, someone talking about, talk is cheap, wanting to do some kind of research because of some of the incredible benefits. Just like when I was in medical school, you never heard of attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity syndrome that's on the
Right.
front pages of magazines. And what has happened in the last 50 years? We've plowed up more gardens, chopped down more orchards, and the problem of the green harvest is in our food chain. What do I mean by this? In the 1940s, when I was a kid, most of your grocery stores were owned by a local family, and you had very few things offered that were more than 50 miles away. And so during the growing season, for about 4 to 6 weeks, you could have certain fruits and vegetables, but then you
Mhm.
couldn't have them the rest of the year. Well, now we have national grocery chains, and agribusiness provides the produce. And lo and behold, you can have watermelon 12 months of the year. You can have raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, you name it all, of the various things 12 months of the year. How do they do this? Well, they do it by they follow the growth zones across the country, and they pick the produce green so it will have a shipping life and shelf life when it gets to the grocery store. However, when you pick it green, the principal molecule in produce is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a wonderful compound, and we could talk about that. However, it is not what your genes call for nutrition to hook together in cellular synthesis to make bioactive molecules to run the biochemistry and physiology of each person. And that's how it works. But where what appears to be fresh vegetables and all were picked before the genes in the plant were able to put the nutrients that our genes call for optimal health, because the plant does not begin to put these phytonutrients in the plant until it begins to ripen on the plant. And
Mhm.
when you pick it green, you're picking it before these nutrients are put into it. It took me about 10 years to realize this, and that's another story. But this is a important thing, and by making you can take fruit that matures, and you can't ship that to a grocery store, but you can rush it to the freeze dryer and under a vacuum reduce it to a powder, which we can put into a dietary supplement like New Eden. And what you're getting are the wide variety of plant made nutrients that the genes call for optimal cellular synthesis to make the bioactive molecules that runs the normal biochemistry of life, which I should say, we don't treat, cure, or mitigate disease or syndrome or correct an abnormal health condition. All we do is improve the nutrient supply to an individual by this plant matured, freeze dried powder that's in the dietary supplement like New Eden. And you get the benefits as if you had your own garden or your own orchard and you were letting it mature before you would take it in. Because when people used to have their garden and orchard, they didn't pick things green, put it on the counter in the or in the refrigerator for a week or two before
Right.
they ate it. And if you want to really see the difference, if nearly everyone knows the difference in the taste of vine ripened tomatoes versus those that are picked green, hard as rocks, to ship to the markets, and they hold them in the back till they are red enough to fool you, but you can't fool the taste because they're tasteless. And I have been informed, and I've looked for the paper but can't find it, pardon me, that Rutgers University has a very extensive agriculture and nutrition department. And I have been told that they've had a paper where they analyzed the juice from a green picked tomato versus a vine ripened tomato, and there are over 200 plant made nutrients in the vine ripened tomato, which makes it taste so much better than the green picked tomato. Well, that's repeated over and over in the food chain, but tomatoes are the best example that you can tell something is missing in this produce. And so this is really, I think, the essence of the trivalent vaccine for the chickens and what implications that can give for human DPT trivalent shots to decrease the low incidence of the terrible reaction that apparently some children get, and that nearly 100% of children that get a DPT shot are irritable for about 24 to 36 hours,
Yeah.
crying, won't eat, won't drink, keep the parents up all night, and they're just miserable, just like the little baby chickens. And that by adding the aloe acemannan to the vaccine, eliminated all symptoms. And when they put them back in there, they immediately would start drinking and eating. And that small amount of period of time can be detected by the fact that you have such a high number of chickens that you get your data from. So that's kind of the essence of how important it is in your choice to add to your modern food chain these molecules that used to be in the family garden and orchard. And with this, your body's cellular synthesis is optimized. And again, I point out in the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act passed in 1994, in the preamble, if you read through it, you can find that the statement is that science and medicine has shown that optimal nutrition is essential for good health, to prevent disease, and to restore health. What more would you want? I can tell you right quickly, rather than just being in the preamble, you wish it was in the body of the law, because in the labeling section of the DSHEA law, which formally established the dietary supplement industry, it states that natural products or nutrition cannot claim to treat, cure, or mitigate a disease or abnormal or syndrome, or correct an abnormal health condition. That's the law. Well, it's fallacious. The preamble has the statement in it, and this example of these baby chicks and the DPT shots show the incredible power of more comprehensive nutrition, as can be found if you add daily to your diet the nutrient molecules of a plant matured produce that is hard to get in this modern era, because we got a parking lot or another house where there used to be vacant lots and people had gardens. And as I remember, nearly every block had one or two cows eating on the vacant lots and up and down
My
the alley.
my
All
dad
that
would talk
gone.
about that.
And
Yeah.
so what we do with dietary supplements is take you back to the optimal nutrition that used to be available when we had a more agrarian population.
Yeah, the victory gardens. My dad would talk about the victory gardens, and they'd have, one cow or some goats or something, even in town, that was the normal lifestyle. Everybody had a garden, not a big pretty lawn. It was making your land useful and using that to heal yourself. I have a question for you about the when they were doing this study with the chicks. What were they giving the chicks the aloe for a period of time before they introduced the DPT vaccine, or was it along with? It seemed to be helpful. What the study showed, a definite benefit with it. I wondered, it seems to be effective pretty quickly from the onset almost.
Well, they put the aloe mannin in the horse vaccine and
Oh,
in the
in the
chicken
vaccine.
vaccine But
Okay.
as some of the people that came to me, the mother who was nursing the baby would take the dietary supplement, and the mannose was in the milk at a
Oh,
higher level than the fact is in some of the primitive nations. It's well known that mother's milk gives you healthier children. In fact, in New Zealand, they did an 18-year study of about, I think it was 1,500 to 2,000 children. And those that nursed up to 8 months from getting mother's milk, which has aloe mannan in it, but is what nature provides for to optimize the nutrition for the infant, that those that had 8 months of breast milk for 18 years scored higher on their IQ tests, on the comprehensive grades in the athletic performance. All 18 years, those children and those that were nursed for 4 months were right in the middle, whereas those that just had the commercial canned formula or powder were at the bottom of this evaluation of these children. And this is just another example of more comprehensive nutrition built around the active ingredient in the aloe plant is incredibly uh, desirable to optimize. And of course, we've added other phytonutrients that's kind of another story. But every time the FDA attacks a company for saying, look at our website for the health benefits of what we've got, they send them a cease and desist letter that you made
yeah.
medical claims for, say, cherries or walnuts or milk whey. And finally, it was this was all in the Wall Street Journal that even the pomegranate people got a cease and desist letter that to say that exactly what's in the preamble to the Deshay Act, that adding this to the diet improved the quality of life and actually prevented various diseases, that you can't say that in the United States. All you can say is all we do is improve nutrition and turn it over to the genes to utilize the more optimal nutrition to make the bioactive molecules that are more perfectly synthesized to run a better level of biochemistry, which prevents and can restore health and keep you in better condition, even when you don't have any kind of deviation from normal.
Yeah, Dr. McDaniel, I have some friends that have another uh, product that they're passionate about, Purple Power C60, that I've talked to you about a little bit. And they have several other scientists that some of them have their other versions of C60. The one that we promote is Purple Power. But because of those same challenges that you're talking about, the whole group or industry decided to set up a separate website away from their products and talk about the benefits of C60, but away from their product, to try to protect their product. And that way it wasn't their website. So you go here for this information, and that way their website wasn't making those claims. I don't know if that would be something that would be helpful to, because I know there are several, you mentioned some other groups that use aloe vera. I just hope more and more of this information gets out, that people can make these choices for themselves so that they can have this nutrition. You've got so much research, facts, information that show the benefits of this and how the body, functions better when you're giving it this phytonutrition, so micronutrition.
Well, instead of setting up a dummy website where you can tell the truth, I
Isn't that
hope these
sad?
lectures that we're doing together is informing the people so that they can make a rational decision and realize that this is the ultimate expression of freedom and independence of your choice of your diet and the amount that you're in control of this, that experts in government, I frequently think at this point what you were telling me is, I think it was President Ronald Reagan says the federal government doesn't solve anything, that the problem is the federal government.
Yep.
And
They
it keeps,
said we're here to this the most terrifying words are we're from the government and we're here to help. Is what
yes.
Ronald Reagan said.
But
So
I do hope that the people hearing these lectures can make a decision to improve their health, because the World Health Organization monitors all the member nations of the United Nations, and the United States is number one in healthcare costs. And last time that they did a world survey of quality of life and health, the United States rated number 35. And one of the reasons is in third world countries, if you eat, you plant the seed, you cultivate it, you harvest it, and you don't harvest it green, you let it mature.
mhm.
And this is healthier. And unfortunately, we go down to the market and we think we're buying fresh fruits and vegetables, but we're buying fruits and vegetables that were picked green before the nutrients were put in it, so that they would have a shipping life and shelf life. And this is the reason fresh, canned, and frozen vegetables and fruit have more nutrients in them, because you wouldn't buy it again if it was tasteless. And that's how they, rather than throw it on the ground like they used to have to do, nearly everyone has a freezer portion to their refrigerator
Mhm.
that used to not be present in refrigerators, where you can buy fresh frozen fruits and vegetables that were allowed to mature and ripen on the plant. We just take these things, rather than freeze them. It's much more economical to put them in a vacuum and freeze them and reduce them to a powder and make a dietary supplement, which, if you'll figure it out, is a whole lot more economical than frozen fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, and it was really helpful for me. I have a little 12-year-old boy, and getting him to try new Eden. It does have that humate in it, which makes it taste a little like dirt, but cherry flavored dirt, a little sour dirt. But so I don't mind it, and I know it's doing good things for myself, my body. So I take it with my probiotic every day. But I was wanting him to be more consistent, so we started making gummies with it. And I was glad to hear earlier in the video, or maybe before we got started, you mentioned that the heat, that it wasn't being broken down with the heat. And I was like, oh, good, because I boiled that in that Jello on the stove. And so I was glad to hear that didn't hurt, that the heat didn't hurt the power or the strength of the aloe. But that was actually like an emulsifier, or kind of like the adjuvant is like the sunflower lectin that we use in the gummies or whatever. It's like an emulsifier, or it holds on to the nutrients. Is that kind of the purpose of that?
Yes, an adjuvant is what makes a vaccine produce more antibodies for protection against whatever the infectious agent was.
Okay.
But you mentioned humate in there, and I
Yeah,
think we went through the
we did.
ingredients that are in the thing. But
Uh-huh.
humate is from a special mine in New Mexico, that when thousands of years ago, maybe even longer, there were volcanoes around that were producing ash that went across the countryside, and the CO2 was higher level at that time. And the plants that grew had these trace minerals from the core of the earth in the ash that went into the plant material, that laid in layers and layers and then got compressed, much like the way coal is made. However, the humate is very, very soft coal, but the leaves that came from the plants that were growing when the ash was coming from the core of the earth have about 76 minerals, trace minerals in there. And I have a book on the shelf right here from Russia, where they did behind the Iron Curtain very detailed analysis of cells, and that in the third step of cellular synthesis, that these trace minerals are added to organic molecules that are important. And so that's the reason we have the humate in there to put back into the food chain, because nearly everybody knows that the tetrapyroles that make up hemoglobin won't carry oxygen unless it has an iron molecule in it. And
Oh,
all the complex organic molecules have a trace of these minerals in it. They'll have little dotted lines to show that the mineral is added. And that's why humate is in there, to bring back into your diet these trace minerals that are no longer in the fruits and vegetables that agribusiness has been uh, uh, growing the same
stripping.
crops in
Yeah,
the same soil for sometimes 50 years and have depleted the trace
right,
minerals. Well, we put them back in New
right.
Eden because your cellular synthesis requires these trace minerals.
That's amazing. So we're having that being restored to our bodies and to our DNA, and so that our bodies can help heal ourselves. I do have a question from my friend Mark Weems. He's in Puerto Rico. Do we ship to Puerto Rico? If not, I might have another solution for him. Or do you
Oh,
know, or
yeah.
should I check with Miss Smith at the office?
I think we ship to Puerto Rico because isn't that a protectorate? And the U.S. mail runs right into Puerto Rico.
It actually is. Just most people don't
Yeah,
know that that
and
is
I
not
don't think
international. Yeah.
there's a problem of shipping.
Okay.
It may cost a little bit more to ship to Puerto Rico, but uh, compared to what, its perceived value, New Eden costs more per canister than most of your dietary supplements. But when you consider all the benefits that we have had reported to us from multiple sites, uh, people in science will say anecdotal reports mean nothing.
Mhm.
You got to do a random assigned placebo controlled study, which I laugh because virtually no drug has been through such a type study because they're so expensive to conduct, and it takes years for it to do the type of study. And multiple sites getting the same response is very powerful, because we don't have a nurse or a fellow calling them up on the phone during a formal study, telling them we want to make sure you're every day doing what you're supposed to be doing during the study. It's all up to the individual.
Right.
And when you have multiple individuals telling you something works, just like these parents that said, my child on their second DPT shot didn't respond because either the mother that was providing the breast milk was on a dietary supplement, or they were actually putting it in the food of a little older child. They
Mhm.
showed no symptoms, just like the baby chicks that had the aloe mannin added to the vaccine.
That's pretty incredible. And once again, listen to the mamas. They know. I always tell young moms, you are the expert of your child, and listen to your gut. And I think we all need to listen to ourselves and kind of check in with ourselves. And our nutrition is so important. So, well, thank you, Dr. McDaniel. I did add your email. I know you have so generously offered the opportunity for people to be able to email you directly and ask questions if they have any deviations from normal. And you have some studies that might give people some peace or some more information, ways that New Eden might be able to support their nutrition.
Also gave them the email that if they're interested in the multiple anecdotal stories of increased
Mhm.
athletic performance by people at the Olympic and World Cup level and professional level, by the effect and benefits of more comprehensive nutrition. I'll send them a copy of all these reports that I've received, which are frankly incredible.
They are. You have a lot of data to share with everybody, and I appreciate you sharing all this with us. You guys can check out, there's a link in the description of this video where you can find a direct link to the website to where you can order your New Eden. If you do choose to do a monthly subscription, you get a discount as well as a free box of probiotic every month with your New Eden. So that's an added benefit. So we will see you all tomorrow here on the New Normal. And we'll see you, Dr. McDaniel, next time here. Thanks so
Thank
much for
you.
everything. All right. Take care.